Hey everyone, I'm Pam and I'm here with my monthly update video letting you know everything that I was up to in the month of March. So I'm getting this video up a little late this month because I was away at the beginning of the month. In terms of updates, not a whole lot of sort of gaming or other content. There's been 2 new episodes of Point and Drink Adventure. One we talked about the tequila sunrise, one we talked about a ripasso. Both had a lot of talk about movies and even some pickups from me this time around. I usually don't have too many pickups, but at the beginning of the month I went to visit Michelle in the States. We went to New York, we saw Moulin Rouge on Broadway, and we also recorded an in-person episode of Point and Drink Adventure, so you've got that to look forward to sometime in the next week or 2. Really what I have for this episode is just a lot of games to talk about. I feel like my updates at the beginning of the year, I was saying like, oh, I haven't really played much, I haven't really finished much, and I've sort of been making up for lost time in March. And a big reason is because I finally finished Marvel's Midnight Suns. I'm not going to talk about this game too much because I've talked about it a couple times before. It was in my Best of 2022 video, but I think by the time I finished it, I had put in 80 hours, which is way more than I'm usually willing to dedicate to any one video game. But I just absolutely loved the combination of like the cards and the tactics and this sort of get all the superheroes in one place and like pretend you're at camp or in university together and just like build relationships and talk to people and go on missions. It just had like this super satisfying gameplay loop that I really enjoyed. But now that I've finished it, it means I have so much time for other games. Something else I played was We Were Here 2. I believe last month I talked about We Were Here. This is a series of online co-op only games that are basically like escape room puzzles where you have to work together. The conceit is that you're lost in the wilderness, you find a big sort of fortress, and then you get split up and you're only communicating via walkie-talkie. So one person will describe what they see and the other person will, and you have to sort of figure out everything to solve puzzles together. This one was slightly less janky than the first one. Still really fun puzzles. I felt like the gameplay was a little bit more balanced in this one. In the first, I felt like one person was always giving the instructions and one person was always doing the things. Here it felt like a little more equal in terms of each person getting a chance to do both of those. And it was another fairly quick one. I think we beat it in like 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours, but lots of fun, and I look forward to playing the third one soon. Something that I played over on Twitch for my Adventure Sundays was Nightmare Frames. This is a fairly recent, I think maybe 2021, pixelated point-and-click adventure. You play a screenwriter of horror movies. Quite a successful one, but you're also kind of a snob and don't want to be writing horror movies. You want to be doing like dramatic Oscar bait pictures, but you can't seem to break into it. Then someone comes along and says they'll make all your dreams come true if you just track down the lost, apparent, scariest movie ever made. So it's basically about that. It takes place in the 80s. There's just tons of 80s horror references if you're into that kind of stuff. The puzzles were really good. The writing was pretty decent. I did find towards the end it got like a little too chatty and I kind of wanted the story to move along, but I really liked the ending specifically. It got really much deeper into the horror than the beginning of the game had been. And I overall really enjoyed it. I think everyone in chat enjoyed it too. So if you like sort of classic point and click adventures, it's a good one to try out. A game that I was really looking forward to last year but didn't end up playing until this year was I Was a Teenage Exocolonist. This is sort of like a life sim card game, also time looping game. I remember it was on, I don't know, like the Summer Games Fest or something, or one of those, and it looked really cool because again, I love card games. I love those sort of like RPG-ish ones where you're sort of going down your own path and, you know, making decisions that change the way things go. This was a bit of a strange one. You start out and you're young, I think like 11 or 12 years old. Your family goes onto a ship to another planet to colonize because the Earth is in bad shape. So you're trying to get on this other planet and find ways to survive and make it sustainable for you while you're there. And as you go, you sort of pick what you want to do. So you can learn about exobiology, or you can get good at combat, or you can form relationships with people. And the writing's actually pretty good. I really liked a lot of the characters. The problem I had with it was that the card game is like stupid easy. Like the deck building didn't really matter. Each challenge that you got was just so easy that it kind of felt like, why is it even here? It didn't seem to add anything to the game. It just sort of spread it out a little bit longer. And the other thing was that it is a time looping game. So after you finish, once you turn like 18 or 19, and then you go back to the beginning, sort of having knowledge of what would happen and knowing that you can go down different paths. But the game probably took me like 10 or 12 hours to go through one time. So I have no desire to do a 10-hour loop. Like that just seems crazy to me. That's not how time looping games should work. So while I thought the writing was good, it just didn't work for me as a card game or as a time looping game, you know? Now with my usual Wednesday co-op group, we've had a little bit of a slow period in terms of finding games that we've really been enjoying. One that we tried out was Cannibal Cuisine, which is basically a Overcooked ripoff, just made by a very small team. You're a bunch of cannibals on an island, and there's this monster, and you have to feed it tourists in order to appease it. And it works very much like Overcooked, where you have to sort of get in each other's way and work around each other, and it'll come up and it'll be like, oh, make this recipe, give it to this guy. But it just felt very sloppy in comparison to Overcooked. It was just like the levels weren't as well thought out. It was a little bit jankier. It wasn't quite as interesting to play. We did end up playing through the whole thing over, I guess, 2 game nights. And, you know, it was an okay time, but it just didn't feel like a nearly as well designed of a game as Overcooked, while at the same time being very, very similar to it. So I don't know, if you really love Overcooked and are looking for something almost exactly like it but worse, go for it. But otherwise, definitely could have skipped that one. It is really dark in here because there is a thunderstorm outside and my ring light broke, but let's keep going. I played through a new Metroidvania that I started on stream and then finished on my own, and this one is called Elderand. It is a pixelated Metroidvania with some like light RPG elements. You're in this kingdom that's very sort of Lovecraftian. There's all kinds of like weird, like cultish figures and statues that are very Cthulhu-like, and you're sort of going through the world, and you can pick your weapon loadout. So you can have like a sword and board, you can have a staff, which is both a melee and a ranged attack, you can have a bow and arrow. I think there's like a dual wield thing, which I never really got into, and there's various potions and items and things that you can take to help you along your way. I thought this game looked really great. Like, I really enjoyed the art style and the different zones that you went through. The platforming was decent, not too challenging. The combat at some points was challenging, but it could generally be overcome by just taking a lot of health potions, even though you are capped at only 3 of each type of potion. I found that this was a very solid Metroidvania. Like, nothing in particular that made me go like, oh wow, this is so unique or better than other things. It was just very, very okay. I enjoyed my time through it. It was also a fairly short one, which was nice. I think my in-game time was only around 6 or so hours, although I definitely played it for a couple more hours than that just because I died a bunch. But it was a fun game, and if you're looking for a Metroidvania that is just a solid good time, then check it out. Something I finished, which I started at the end of last year, is The Case of the Golden Idol. I did mention this as an honorable mention in my Best of 2022 video. This is basically a detective game where you're not playing like a player character who's a detective. You, the player, are just figuring out what happened everywhere. It's got this kind of weird, kind of ugly art style, if I'm gonna be honest. Like, the characters are not super nice to look at, but it's, you know, it's an intentional thing that they're going for. And you're presented with a scene of a death. So the first one, you see someone who's sort of like falling off a hill, and there's like little hot spots on the screen that you can examine. So you might find a note in someone's pocket, or you might find a weapon, or you might find some coins. And using all of this, you sort of pick out keywords from the descriptions of the things that you're finding, and then you have basically a page that you need to fill out. So you'll have a portrait, and you'll have to say, like, who is this character? Who is this character? And you'll have maybe some other things to fill out, and then eventually just a story saying, like, okay, this guy and this guy had a business deal, but one of them decided to betray the other, and they got into a fight, and this guy was pushed off the hill. So you just sort of fill in the blanks in order to fill out what happened in the story. And it tells like a big overarching story, and then each specific scene sort of gets more and more complicated as it goes. And it was really good, just like a really good puzzly thinking detective game, and I definitely recommend it if you like things like I guess Return of the Obra Dinn is probably the thing I most compare it to in terms of just like the kind of puzzle solving, even though the presentation is fairly different, but really good game. Another game that my co-op group has been sort of dipping in and out of over the past few months is Prodeus, which we finally finished the other week. Prodeus looks very much like a low resolution Doom, or I guess a higher resolution original Doom, lower resolution new Doom, whatever, you know what I mean. You're just going through levels very, very quickly, moving fast, no, cover or any of that nonsense, just going through, shooting demons. You've got a whole bunch of different weapons to choose from, which are all fairly different and play really nicely. And you're finding, collectibles here and there, new ammo, new armor, and keys in order to unlock things to get through every level. It's just a very straightforward, fast, satisfying kind of game. I did find myself missing like some sort of special attack, grenade, something. It was basically just all weapons all the time. But it was a fun game. It was interesting at the end because I knew we were getting close to the end, but we finished this one level and then it just got a like, congratulations, you're finished screen. I was like, oh, okay, I guess we're done. And I know there's all kinds of user created content and everything, but we just went through the main campaign and it was lots of fun. One thing that I love about it is that if you die, you have the option to spawn either at the last checkpoint or at any of your buddies in the level. Actually, you can teleport to any of your buddies in the level at any point, which makes it amazing, especially for those who are more directionally challenged, so that you can just sort of all get together at any time, which was just like an amazing little design addition I loved. But yeah, Prodeus was fun. I've had a few friends lately who have been playing Hollow Knight, and anytime anyone talks to me about Hollow Knight, I think I should play another game of Hollow Knight. So I started a new game, I played through, I was sort of taking my time, I wasn't being a completionist about it, although I do plan to. I really want to do the Pantheons, and for some reason I think I need to start a new game every time I want to go for that. But I finished the game in around like 17 hours or something, and I felt like I'd done a fair amount of stuff. I had taken my time, and I thought after that, there's a 10-hour speedrun achievement. I'm positive I could do that. So I started another new game, started out. After the first hour, I said to myself, there's a 5-hour achievement. I think I could do that. So I started just sort of gunning it, trying to beat the game within 5 hours. I came in at 4 hours and 57 minutes, which was incredible. I have such a problem with the Watcher Knights. I'm sure I spent at least an hour on them. And then Hollow Knight, who usually by the time I get to him, you've got a few extra health bars and a few extra mana and you've got some spells. he's not a problem. Like on my first replay, I two-shot him. This time he was much harder without any like nail upgrades and things. But yeah, 4 hours and 57 minutes. So happy that I came in under that 5 hour, because if I had to just like died one more time and missed it by 2 minutes, I would have been so mad. But yeah, Hollow Knight is still absolutely amazing. Definitely my favorite Metroidvania. Just sort of cements itself that way every time I play it, which is some of the best exploration and combat that's fairly simple, but just so like nice and tight that it's so satisfying anytime you beat a boss. So yeah, I'll probably be continuing playing Hollow Knight, just going for that 112%, I think the total is, as I go, but I'll just be sort of playing that among other things soon. We're almost done. I told you I had a lot of games to talk about. Something I picked up fairly recently is called Lucifer Within Us. I've been looking just for more of those sort of satisfying detective style games. And in this one, you play an investigator, specifically sort of like a demon hunter investigator, and you find that a demon has taken over someone and a murder has taken place. So you basically have to investigate the scene. It takes place in sort of an isometric top-down view. Investigate the scene, see what happens, talk to everyone who was there, and then you just have to point out inconsistencies and question people further. So someone might say this little bit of dialogue and you'll be like, wait, I have a contradiction, and then you point to either like the evidence or someone else's dialogue that they said in order to sort of square up exactly what happened. It was actually pretty well done, I thought, although it was a very short game. Like there was only 3 cases in the whole thing. It took me less than 2 hours to beat, which I'm fine with. I love short games, but it felt like the introduction to a game. It didn't feel like a whole game. Like it's fairly complicated getting used to like the interface and exactly how it works. And so I found like by the time I really got a handle on it and like really had my teeth sunk into the story, it was like, okay, we're done now, which was a little bit disappointing. But I still thought it was a fairly well done game. I liked the detective aspects. I'd probably wait for a sale for this one just because it is such a short game, but overall it was enjoyable. And last, and kinda least, unfortunately, is Romancelvania. This is a game that I was really looking forward to. It combines a Metroidvania with a sort of dating sim. You play Dracula. He's been in his castle moping over the breakup of his last relationship like 100 years ago. And the Grim Reaper sets up basically a dating reality show for him that you have to take part in. You can play either a male or a female Dracula, depending on what you want. I just played the male one. He had really nice abs. And I played it on stream a while ago, the demo, and I like the first hour or 2 of the game quite a bit. The writing is funny, it's like really smutty. There's a lot of puns in it. I liked meeting the characters that you could date and sort of talking to them and going on your little dates. And at first I thought the actual platforming and combat was just sort of like fine, like nothing to write home about, but not terrible. But as the game went on, the combat showed just real weaknesses. Like it was completely weightless. Like it was hard to tell when you were hitting anything other than the fact that damage numbers would appear above their head, but there was no like satisfying controller vibration, no like satisfying sound effect. It just seemed like you were hitting things and going right through them even when you were damaging them. The platforming wasn't that great either. The jump was a bit floaty. Sometimes the level design made it so you were just like getting caught on edges of things. There were specials that you could use, but they all had such long cooldowns, or they weren't really that useful, like turning into mist. There was like a Hadouken, which I honestly just accidentally triggered all the time, so I was always using it when I wasn't supposed to be. And then even the sort of dating sim aspect of it got worse. So there's maybe 10, 12 characters who you can date, and most of the time your quest is just go recruit more cast members. You find the cast members, and then it's like, now get rid of some cast members. And it's like, go find some more, now get rid of some. So there's some people who you meet and you have like one conversation with, and then it's like, all right, Black Rose ceremony, send somebody home. It's like, well, I don't really understand the point of getting rid of characters like almost as soon as you find them. So I found that even that part started to get really rushed, and the whole reality TV aspect of it kind of started falling by the wayside at the end. So yeah, it was pretty disappointing. Oh, also there's no map, which was just infuriating. Metroidvanias without maps should just not be allowed. Put a map in your game, please. It was very difficult to tell where you should be going because a lot of the time you had to revisit old areas just to find cast members, and it was hard to find them or remember which person was in which area and things like that. So yeah, sadly that one was a disappointment. I had such high hopes for it, and I even liked the first bit of it, but it ended up being not a whole lot of fun, and I finished it just because I felt like I was so close to the end, I may as well finish it, but I would not replay it, and I wouldn't really recommend it to anyone either. All right, and that is it for the games I've played. Let me know in the comments what you were playing last month, if there's anything that you want to recommend to me. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.